This is Mike Fallon with Famble, and today I have with me Sadie Katz. And Sadie Katz is going to be talking to us about two of her upcoming projects. One is the Bill Murray Experience, and the other is Party Bus to Hell. Sadie, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on
Let's,
this Saturday
oh,
morning.
yes, on a Saturday
Yeah,
morning.
on a
Uh,
Saturday.
the first thing I wanted to talk about was the Bill Murray documentary that you made, and it's a little interesting. It's not like other documentaries where people are looking for an idea or theology or something. You're looking for a person. Could you tell me some about that?
Well, actually, what's funny about it is I always sort of felt that I was looking for the idea or the philosophy of Bill Murray. Like, because of Bill was doing these really crazy things besides, when I first started reading about him having like interactions with fans, I was thinking like there's something wonderful about he was like personifying living in the moment, like actually connecting with people in a real visceral way. And that got me really excited. So as much as like I'm a fan of Bill Murray as an actor, of course, like, Lost in Translation, Broken Flowers, Strife, like, there's something great about watching him on screen. But more than that, I was kind of really a fan of what he was doing. And there was something kind of magical and special.
Getting a documentary started is always, from what I've been told, quite an endeavor. How did you go about getting yours off the ground?
Oh boy. When I first went to people, I was meeting with a lot of friends and I was saying like, hey, I want to do this doc. And they knew me as an actress and a writer. And I said, I want to do this doc looking for Bill Murray. And they're like, well, he's impossible to find. He's a really elusive actor. And I was like, yeah, that's what the documentary is about. And they're like, well, what if you don't get him? I said, well, if I don't get him, I'll eventually get him. Like, I'll keep searching long enough where I find him. What that turns out to be will be, I don't know. So it was really, really difficult to get people on board with it. And I think my executive producer, Jim Griffiths, who ended up financing it, excuse me, who ended up financing it, I think he was, he was kind of just bullied into it by me, poor guy. I mean, I don't think he believes in the project at all until it was done, and then he went, "Oh my gosh, you have a movie." I was like, "What the hell do you think we've been doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what we were doing the whole time," but it's really hard for people to get excited about something that's not like I'm doing a movie about sex trafficking. Like
Hmm.
that's a doc where people are like, oh, we know what we're to expect with that. With this, everyone's like, how do you know what you're going to do? And I have sort of a rough outline of my journey, but of course it went all different ways than that.
Which I know you have quite a few people on board that you interview throughout this documentary. How did you get a hold of them to get this started, or how did you pitch it to them to get them on board?
Here's a really fun story actually. I knew that I wanted to track down one of Bill's family members because I sort of through social media, I could kind of see what they were doing. And I looked up Joel Murray, who's from God Bless America and Mad Men. And, he's been a director and a bunch of things, but I knew he lived in Los Angeles. And so he happened to be having a comedy show at, um, not Second City, but the other one. But anyway, so he had a comedy show, and I was like, let's all go to the comedy show. And they're like, what are you going to say? So I was like practicing this whole crazy speech of like what I was going to say, and instead I walked in, he was having a drink, and I just went up to him and I was like, hey, Joel Murray. I'm Sadie. I'm doing a documentary searching for your brother. Do you want to have a cigarette outside? And everyone's like, why did you say that? I said, oh no, I'm just going to be honest. So I went outside and we talked, and we started like a little friendship. I think he was trying to like suss me out, like how crazy is this person? So, which would be kind of crazy. But so I met him in a group of people having beers at the Cat and the Fiddle. And then eventually, after getting to know me and we kind of became buddies, he was like, are you ever going to interview me for your documentary? We didn't show all that in the doc. We kind of just showed me like like we skipped the middle part because it wasn't that interesting. It's a lot more fun just to get right to the interview. And honestly, I didn't want to film anything with Joel until he said to me, let's film. And he's a really fun, wonderful person. And my friend Jim Towns had already shot with PJ Souls, so he kind of hooked that up, which was lovely because she's lovely.
Was the experience a life-changing one for you by the time you had everything wrapped up? Do you feel like you're a different person now than when you started this project?
Oh my God, yeah. Which, I mean, if you say that to someone, they go, you did a documentary chasing Bill Murray and it changed you. And I'm like, well, anytime you set out to do a journey, whether it's, deciding to collect a bunch of sneakers, you're going to be a sneakerhead or whatever it is, I think the journey on the way to accomplishing your goal and kind of overcoming obstacles, like that's what I hope with the documentary, even if you're not a Bill Murray fan, which would be impossible because everyone's a Bill Murray fan, but let's pretend. I hope that people relate to the idea that, I mean, any kind of journey that's like elusive changes you, especially when you stick to it. Like, doing a podcast or anything, there's so many naysayers and it takes such a dedication. I mean, I was working on this doc for like 3 years. So, I mean, it was really a year for looking for Bill, but then, you're in post and then you have to, you have to sell the film and everything, and then you do your premieres and your film festivals. And I mean, it's a huge portion of your life. So, yeah, you're not the same person when you're done because now you have this thing under your belt that, you stuck to your guns with.
Do you have a different outlook on Bill Murray now than before you started this project?
Oh, I love that question. That's a really good question. Oh gosh, I like if I were to answer it honestly, which I should, right?
I hope so. I am a journalist.
Saying, I must have the truth. I've said Bill Murray's name so much, and he's like, there was a part in my life which is so embarrassing, and I could write a book about this later, because it was absurd, where the guy I was dating when I was doing the doc, like I broke up with my fiance, and then we got back together, and we kept going back and forth. So as I'm doing the documentary, we're having screaming fights about Bill Murray, because he is... And I couldn't include this in the doc because we had it and then it seemed so tacky, but he was like, all you want to talk about is Bill Murray. And so he was really jealous about Bill. And so now when I think of Bill, he's like this huge part of my life that he doesn't even know, like on that level, that I was actually like, in a huge breakup, and everyone was like, you're way too obsessed with Bill Murray, which I mentioned in the doc. But the fact that he was like the third triangle in my love triangle is pretty funny. I mean, it was so ridiculous. Now, I was like, what are you talking about? This is what my documentary is about, is me chasing Bill Murray. But no, there was a couple of like crazy fights about Bill Murray. So... He doesn't know he was part of my love triangle. So my opinions of him when I see him are pretty funny. I mean, that's embarrassing to admit, but it's hilarious.
Are we going to be able to see any of those cut scenes from this documentary anywhere, or are you going to keep those hidden away? So you'll not have to see that far into your life.
I know, right? Well, I show a lot into my life, but the Blu-ray and the DVD has a bunch of cut scenes, and not so much that. But you kind of see more of the girls. The original idea with the doc was that all of my girlfriends were going to have a New Year's resolution, or they did have their New Year's resolution, and I had my New Year's resolution to meet Bill Murray. And so but they didn't end up staying on the project. So the footage I had of them wasn't enough. It was like I only had footage of my one girlfriend, Ashley, moving, and that was her New Year's resolution. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? They didn't stay on the project, so it was never supposed to just be about me searching for Bill. But when we went through the editing, it was like, that was really the story that was jumping out because I was so committed. So it's not really a sag on the girls, but the girls weren't that committed. They were just like, oh, Sadie wants to film a documentary. I'm going to show up and say funny stuff. And I was like, no, I'm under a fever. I must have this happen. And that wasn't as fun for them. I don't know why.
It's not easy to get people aboard your passion projects. I mean, I've had so many that have fallen through because people are like, yeah, and then they find out it's real work, and they're like, oh. No, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's something so kind of, it's really magical when you can find that person because they almost become like, I mean, my editor, Jim Towns, I went through 3 editors. The project was like, had been, I've been filmed it for a year and then another year of like trying to figure out what I had. And I knew what I had, but I couldn't get anybody really on board. And so Jim had directed me in House of Bad and State of Desolation, and I was calling and complaining all the time of like, why can't people love this like I love it? Like, what's the problem? And finally I said, because he always understood where I was like, Jim, will you please edit this for me? And he happened to have a little break in between films. And thank God, because I was like, this is exactly every scene I want laid out. And I like wrote it to him, and then we started editing it together, and then he did the animation. But all it takes, you need one person to really be on your team, or your project is doomed. It's just doomed. Don't you think that's true?
Yeah, it's almost impossible to do everything by yourself. I try to with everything I produce out of my studio for Fan Bolt and before that Dread Central. It's so difficult. I try to get my wife to do a few things, but it's just like I'm asking a lot of someone that's not really in the business to do business things.
and when you like snap, because you're doing something that means everything to you, you're not always the most pleasant person. I normally, like as an actor, I'm a pretty pleasant person because all I have to do is show up and act. That's it. On this, I was like, I think the biggest thing was actually just getting people to kind of give me a chance to show I could do it. And it's so funny because I had so many people come to Palm Springs for the premiere, and there was at the film festival there was like 300 people, but then separately I did a screening at UCLA, and it was like all people I knew in the biz and from Facebook and everything, especially think of like my Dread Central, horror family kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like 300 people there, and everyone kept coming up to me going, you talked about this so much on social media for so long, and I didn't believe you, and I came because I couldn't figure out what the hell you had done. And that was such a validation, but I was like, where were you before, bitches? You could have been supportive like a long time ago.
Speaking of horror is a good segue.
I know, sorry. We can't help it. I mean, right?
When I get back,
But yeah,
I'm going to sue this bus company for every penny that they're worth.
Best to help. Gravitas is distributing it, and so they want it at the front of the scroll. So now it's Best
where is
Party to
that?
Hell, which sounds a little handicap, but oh wow.
Oh, everything I see is still a good party bus now. Is that change upcoming, or is it?
You'll have like
on a party bus heading to the Burning Man Festival.
We left the highway?
Yeah, about 5 minutes ago. This ride may get a bit bumpy.
Are we there?
He's gonna do a movie called One. Remember
Everybody, just making a quick pit stop.
Anyway, yeah, party bus to help us.
We must be in a dead zone.
It's such
Hear
a fun
everything
movie.
we're saying.
And
Your
it's,
deepest, darkest
ridiculous.
fears.
Lots of
Oh my God!
It's that kind of hard.
What's the comment? I mean,
Hey guys, this one's unlocked.
Like, I mean, when my manager sent me it, I felt like I had my own.
We entered hell.
Yeah.
It's making you
You want to
crazy?
be part of
I'll
that
show you crazy.
outrageous
It's gonna be the night of your life.
the outrageous portion of themselves.
This is all my fault.
Yeah, and I think it's so funny
But I'm not the leader. I'm just a servant to the chosen one.
It's like, it's so fun, you know, cheeky, and it doesn't try to be more than what it is. And I think it delivers the scares, the laughs, and like, what do you expect from a movie called Party Bus? Tara Reid as a bus driver. We're like, we get really high and get ready to have a fun time.
Yeah, when you see Tara Reid pop up in the credits, you have to understand what you're going to see. You can't be like, well, I'm looking for the next Hitchcock movie. No, you are getting a fun movie.
You're just getting a fun movie.
Don't be pretentious in your review about it.
So we've got really good reviews. I think people have been on board. Rolf Kaminsky wrote a really fun script. And he kept it very, you know, quippy, which is nice quippy. And then Michael Chabon, what I did, I was worried about doing the nudity and the day before. It looks like
Are we on a party bus heading to the Burning Man Festival?
We left the highway?
Yeah, about 5 minutes ago. This ride may get a bit bumpy.
I saw the footage and I was like, okay then, let's do this. Good.
Are we there?
How do you prepare yourself for doing where you have to reveal
Everybody,
so much of yourself?
just
Is
making
there
a
any
quick pit stop.
apprehension about it, or do you just
I
get on set
jump
and just
in.
say
We must
go?
be in a dead zone.
For me, I jump in. I kind of, you know what? I try to dominate the room. Like, you know, if you let on that you're insecure, even for like a
Hey guys, this one's unlocked.
or like, you know, this morning I'm getting ready to shoot. And I'm like, you know, I wish I did some more sit-ups.
We ended hell.
So I
making you
Crazy?
go and I
I'll
sort
show
of
you crazy.
it's
gonna be the night of your life.
Because you have to be like, I'm okay.
I'm not the leader. I'm just a servant to the chosen one.
Choosing the boys, choosing the girls. You know, I mean, it's like you have to be so if there's even a moment where you show your part, it ruins it for everybody. Everyone's like,
Where's the bus driver?
you don't even have the guys who are like walking around like it's fucking Christmas. We're seeing boots today.
Coming soon.
Like, they don't say that, but that's the energy. Or you have people who like won't look you in the eye. So I'm like, listen, these are my boobs. If I'm showing them, like, you better enjoy them.
This bus comes here for every penny that they're worth.
It's me, Ivy. Open up.
You have to have fun with it, and also maintain your own like respect.
thing.
You know, there is the point somebody can give me my robe right now. I've been doing this for a while. I need a breather. You know, it's like,
Are we on a party bus heading to the Burning Man Festival?
We left the highway?
Yeah, about 5 minutes ago.
Is
This ride may
it
get a bit
more?
bumpy.
Is it tougher to do it with a room full of men, or is it tougher to do it with a room full of women?
oh, I love
Are we
you so
there?
much. Women.
They're listening.
Everybody, just making a quick pit stop.
Yeah, men are just like,
No, we must be in a dead zone.
oh, good. I mean, you want to say everyone's super professional and they're not. That's just not the truth.
Oh my God!
You know, we're all human. I mean, they should say it. You know, everyone's pretty
Hey guys, this one's unlocked.
Yeah.
So you get nitpicked a little bit more for a whole bunch of women.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's weird because I talked to Joel Kinnaman on
hell.
the Disney. I was more worried about getting along with the crew than being naked.
It's
So
gonna
I'm
be
just
the night
thinking
of
it's
your
just that
life.
the interpersonal relationships are more important than having stuff.
I'm not the leader. I'm just a servant to the chosen one.
Oh my gosh, I got like they're waiting for me today.
Oh, not a problem. We'll just we'll wrap with when will you be able to see Butt?
Well, it's going to be actually
Where's the bus driver?
April 20th. And then it's going to be out on VOD and on demand and all the on,
I
I
hate
believe,
movies.
April 15th.
Coming soon.
So,
Okay.
I kind of recommend if you can see it in a theater. It's a really fun movie. Like that's a silly movie night, but either
I gotta get
way,
back. I'm gonna
get the
sue
friends
this
together
bus
and
company for every penny that
have a
they're
bus
worth.
party to hell.
All right.
Get away from me!
Thank you very much, Sadie, for taking the time to talk to us. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for the tangent we went on, because it's very,
I know, right?
it's nice to have a dialogue with someone that's out there where I don't have to be afraid of saying, I'm deeply liberal, and I work in the entertainment industry.
Are we on a party bus heading to the Burning Man festival?
We left the highway?
Yeah, about 5 minutes ago. This ride may get a bit bumpy.
Thank you very much. And I don't want to hold you up anymore. You need to get going, and we love doing it in the industry.
Are we there?
So, thank you again.
Happy
Do this
Saturday.
here.
I hope I talk to you again.
Everybody, we're just making a quick pit stop.
Same here. Thank you very much, Sadie. You have a good one.
We
You
must be in a
too.
dead
Okay.
zone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Everything we're saying, your deepest, darkest fears.
Oh my God!